right, you guys are live and taking it. Oops.
There we go. You are eventually going to have to fall in love with this intro music. It took us 2 years to get rid of the last stuff. I'm not going back.
It was a great 2 years.
Do you hear the old music when you hear this music? Is that how you get over it? Yeah? We should probably share on Facebook. Mike, should our listeners who might be joining us early do the same?
Yeah, share on the Facebook.
And the Twitter?
No, it's just called Twitter.
Oh. The gram. Share it for the gram. We will be with you folks shortly. Leave a comment below. We're glad to have you. Let us know how the Super Bowl was. Did you host a party? Did you get in trouble? Did you break any TVs, Eagles fans?
They're just terrible.
They're so bad.
There's like a few exceptions, E. White, but other than that,
I love how E. White is the exception.
pretty much the only Eagles fan
Yeah.
I've ever met that I can actually get along with.
I know two of them. The other guy lives in Chicago and just so happens to be an Eagles fan. He's an okay guy, but
You're not going to be a Bears fan.
he's also a Cubs fan. So like,
Glutton for punishment too.
yeah, you know what I mean? So I know he's a decent individual based on that alone. You don't choose to suffer if you're not a good individual.
Shout out to our producer who's not here today, actually.
Yeah, Frankie, you want to say what's up?
Hey, everybody. I'm replaced Gabe today.
So let us know in the comments if the show is more organized or less organized than usual.
Wow, the pressure's already on.
Okay. As you can tell, I have absolute dog shit phone service down here. Should probably just take this off the table. Did you do your sharing?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Frankie, are you ready in the back?
I'm ready.
Mike, are you ready up here?
I'm ready.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to yet another episode of Glass Half Sports. I am one half of your hosting duties, as always, Nick Huffman. As always, also joined by my co-host, Mike Mensing. How was your Super Bowl weekend, my friend?
It was good. What's up, Tim?
Hello, Tim.
I actually worked both days, but I got out of work just in time to basically race to see the kickoff.
Oh, so you had to actually sit down and watch the whole Super Bowl?
No.
Oh.
We had to leave the Super Bowl party right after halftime.
Why was this? Rihanna put the baby to sleep?
Well, I have a baby, and it was like 7:30, so we needed to go home and get her to bed.
Oh.
So I basically missed the third-ish quarter, but I listened to a lot of it on the radio.
Okay, very nice. Old school on the radio, right? Huddled around the campfire, as you
Yeah.
called it earlier
Yeah.
this morning.
Yeah, I told Nick earlier this morning I was huddled around the campfire listening to this third quarter, and then the new intro interview for Brian Flores as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Mike, we got a big show for the folks this week. What do we got for them?
Yeah, guys, as always, we do have a big show for you today. We're going to do our Super Bowl review. We're going to do a Minnesota sports roundup, off-season Kickstarter. So Nick and I are going to talk about 10 storylines that we're kind of watching.
8, but 8
10 sounds like more than...
Exactly, like the
Okay.
common man thing.
Yeah,
there you
and
go.
then we're going to do fight news at the wrap-up. There was a big fight this week
There was.
between Volk and Makachev, and we'll talk through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then a couple of other pieces of fight news, Mike. If they are tuning in or they're going to be tuning in the future, what platforms can they find us on outside of our live shows?
Yeah, as always, we can be found on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, Spotify, YouTube, Patreon, and Twitch.
Yes.
Our Twitch is reserved and ready and waiting.
Yeah,
So just let us know.
Yeah, you know, whenever you want to see me give Mike the smoke in Madden, like I always do, and you know, maybe one of these days we'll bring this this bandwagon on over to a radio station near you. So if you're hearing this and you're like, hey, I don't have a good sports show in my town, write your local radio stations. We'd love to join you.
Yeah. And we can be found post-show as well on local cable here in the Twin Cities area on MCN 6. That's 10 p.m. on Saturday evenings. Otherwise, we can be found through your Roku app if you are not in the Twin Cities area.
And by not in the Twin Cities area, do you mean like Japan?
Sure.
Do you mean like Singapore?
Sure.
Russia?
Yep.
Ukraine,
Yeah. I think Russia has Roku. I think so.
Yeah. Roku sounds Russian, so like that would make sense.
I
What about
guess.
Spain, Mexico,
Yep.
Canada.
Yep.
Oh, so like literally anywhere all over the planet, this show can be found at any given time.
Except North Korea, probably.
There is no excuse for you not to be watching.
Alrighty, and with that, we'll kick off the show. So 38-35 Chiefs in Super Bowl 57. We both called it. We both thought Chiefs.
I thought by a little bit bigger than this, but yep, both picked the Chiefs.
To be honest, the game reflected what we thought, though, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I
it
thought-
really did.
First thing I'll say is the Eagles looked like who I thought that they were, to be
Yep.
completely honest.
Sure.
They look like they are a good football team. Don't get me wrong while I talk about this. They are a good football team in the NFL. They're probably top 6 in the NFL.
I would agree.
However, I don't think that they were the best team to challenge the Chiefs, and I thought they got a few lucky breaks that basically made that game closer than it should have been.
Yeah.
I think the deep ball where the Chiefs DB got turned around should have been a pick.
Yeah.
And I think allowing Jalen Hurts to play rugby style QB sneaks football will be banned by next year.
Possibly. I don't know if banned is the right word, but I
The
definitely
NFL will
think-
not stand for a scrum like that.
Yeah,
they won't.
Probably not long term.
It's literally rugby style. That's not football, in my opinion, and
Yeah.
it can lead to injuries.
Sure.
It's something they don't want to catch on as a trend, and I think
Yeah.
they squash it immediately. To be honest,
Potentially. One of the things that I noticed in this game right away was first and foremost, I don't care if it was Andy Reid, I don't care if it was Patrick Mahomes, I don't care if it was Travis Kelce, I don't care if it was Eric Bieniemy. Whoever decided that fly bounce motion at halftime was against that double A gap look was something that they were not only going to be able to go back to once for a touchdown on one side, but again for a touchdown on the other side, and then to force the penalty that we'll get to, which was probably one of the biggest in NFL history if you consider like just the implications of time of game and the type of game that we were playing, to draw that flag the third time that you run it all in the second half is incredible. Just a genius level call to see, hey, they just don't have an answer for this.
right?
Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs gave the Eagles umpteen chances to win this game. Patrick Mahomes not on, or pretty much on a bum ankle, really not being able to move the football effectively in the first half. The Eagles gave it right back to him a lot of times. That fumble by Jalen Hurts, in my opinion, in a moment like that is inexcusable. Can it happen to anybody? But you have to take better care of the football. Those are the little things, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially in the Super Bowl, plays like that are going to be magnified.
Yeah.
Something I noticed too is when I was watching the Eagles offense, I just found myself thinking not so much like how good they were,
Yeah.
but just how bad the Chiefs were. Like the Devontae Smith touchdown to tie it up 35-35.
Yeah.
Nobody within 10 yards of
Yeah.
him. Like, show me how many plays in the Super Bowl have had a receiver catch the ball with no defender within 10 yards of him.
Yep.
Doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
Um,
But what happened is the one thing that I think we see, Kansas City has become a mature team. And I mean that in the way of when they don't have the best weapons on the field, when the defensive secondary is having a bad day, when Chris Jones, whatever the issues they may be having at the skill positions, when it comes to the trenches, when it comes to offensive and defensive line, it creates a certain floor for this team that is hard for a lot of other people to get to. I pretty much said to all my friends all season long after the Eagles had made some of those mid-season additions, Linval Joseph, Ndamukong Suh, Theo Riddick, Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis, just the overwhelming amount of interior and exterior pass rush in defensive line talent that they had, for it to be nullified by Kansas City's offensive line was crucial. And then on the other side of the ball, Chris Jones alone took on that offensive line and pretty much said, hey, we're going to have to play 3 yards in a cloud of dust football all day. And you saw it on that last pass. It eventually did affect Jalen Hurts in his ability to throw the football because he's got a banged up shoulder and he's been in dog piles all day long. Just the Chiefs are going to be around for a while because of that and that alone. It's the same reason the Niners are always in it regardless of who their quarterback is.
Well,
their trench play is unreal.
and I think the Eagles' trench play statistics got inflated because they had an easy schedule.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Their D-line was so great. They had the third easiest schedule throughout the NFL season, guys. So their D-line play is going to be better than somebody who has the third toughest schedule in the
Yeah.
NFL season, right?
Yep.
And then if you go into the Super Bowl and you get 0 sacks, that proves my point.
Yeah. No, I totally agree
They
with you.
weren't that good. So I don't know. I'm just saying. It was a fun game. Let's talk about the call that was heard around the world.
You have to make it. Here's the thing. I
When
understand.
you see it's the specific angle of him grabbing the jersey
Yeah.
and the jersey stretching it's too obvious not to call.
Correct. And I get what people say when they're like, "Oh, the ball would have been overthrown." I don't know if Juju springs loose on that. Is it a
doesn't
catchable
matter
ball,
because
right?
it's
You know
a
what I mean?
defensive holding penalty and not a defensive pass interference. So the ball in play is moot. Doesn't
Totally
matter.
agree with you. I'm just gonna say I agree with the gripes in a game where you saw a master class in quarterback play, right? For Patrick Mahomes to come out and score or have 4 scoring drives in the second half, for him to scramble up the field, you can see on that run that other wheel's just not there, and it's just like a peg, and he's just pushing off of it, and then Jalen Hurts and how impressive he was all day, and get to the end of that game and you're like, this is going to be a classic. Somebody's going to go down as, uncontested, and then the refs get involved. I get why people don't want to see the call.
I understand
But
it, but at the same
you
time,
have
don't
to
commit the
call it.
holding if you're James Bradbury.
Exactly. Don't put yourself in position to get beat like that. Come up with an answer. Like, that's more than anything. You want to be mad at James Bradbury more than any, for the penalty. That's fine. But how about blame the defensive coaching that put them in a position to get burned by the same play 3 separate times? And if I'm the corner and I saw them score twice on this, am I forcing myself to play that more aggressively to make sure that we don't wind up with the same result because then the game is over? Yes, coach that situation better and don't put your guys in that spot.
Yeah, I mean the fact that you give up 24 points in the second half, 17 of them in the fourth quarter,
Yeah.
in the Super Bowl. That's a tough look. And then you go turn around and you get a head coaching job somewhere else. So congratulations to him.
Woo. And you know what? That is my biggest question about the Philadelphia Eagles.
Their OC's gone, their DC's gone.
I love Nick Sirianni. I think what he was able to do with his belief in Jalen Hurts was something special. And I think
Their schedule is going to be a lot tougher next year.
And I don't know. I always kind of felt like Philly was a collective at the coaching position.
Sure.
Now that those guys are gone, how well can Nick Sirianni, with success and expectation, steer this ship now by himself? And they've got a lot of big free agent decisions to make this offseason as well. Could the Eagles, if he doesn't do this right, slide back to a 9-win team again? Yeah, absolutely. So you're going to see exactly what he's made out of this offseason.
I mean, to be honest, I think that's who the Eagles were. I think they were a 9 to 10 win team who had the third easy schedule and coasted. And then again, the Giants in the divisional round, we knew the Giants weren't that good. As
Right.
Vikings fans, we know that, right?
Yes.
And then they played the Niners with a 4-string quarterback. And then they played the Chiefs defense, which is not a good defense. They've relied on their offense all year. They play quarterback with one leg.
The truth
He
of the
finally
matter
comes out.
the truth of the matter is the NFC has one team right now that is as talented as the AFC's top 5 teams.
The 49ers.
And it's the 49ers.
100%.
And that is it, folks.
100%.
The only team that's close. I don't
Well-
think I had anything else for you, Frankie.
With that, I think we should open it up to the fans and let you guys tell us what you thought about the Super Bowl as well.
Absolutely.
What did you think of the holding call?
Yeah.
Would you have called it?
Love to know.
With that, let's transition into our Minnesota Sports Roundup section.
Yeah, I think this is important to to kick things off. Let's talk about the introduction of our a year to the date of us introducing Kevin O'Connell. We introduced Brian Flores as the defensive coordinator. I made a point to watch all of the content with him involved in it. Throughout the last 48 hours, I think they've been putting stuff out, Vikings Network, things like that. Mike, what are your first impressions of Brian Flores here in Minnesota?
He is who I thought he was.
Oh, yeah.
100%, right?
Mhm.
We knew that bringing Flores in was going to bring an aggressive style of defense. He specifically said during his interview that he is an aggressive person.
Yeah.
And he also made the important distinction immediately after by saying he's not reckless.
Correct.
He's aggressive.
Yes.
And And that was kind of our concern a little bit last week when talking about it, was that we gave up some of them, or I think the most big plays in the NFL last year, right?
Over the last 2 years, actually.
And when you play cushion, that can lead to happen, but also it can happen when you blitz recklessly.
Oh, yeah.
And that was kind of something that we touched on last week. So it was good to hear him point that out, that he's going to be intelligent with his blitzes, and they're going to be possibly check blitzes, or they're going to be called blitzes in the huddle that you come out and basically see who's coming depending on the formation that they line up in offensively. Just hearing him talk, I like what he says.
Yes.
He knows his stuff. The collaboration between him and KOC and Kwesi sounds like it's going to be a really nice, well-oiled machine moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to see that the moves that they make to make this Flores' defense.
Yes. You know, for me, it was very interesting. There was a lot of interesting things that came out of that press conference. Just little nuggets for me that like, you sit there and you go, oh, okay. You know what? Better than I thought. The fact that one of the things when he interviewed for the job that him and Kevin O'Connell had talked about was the type of players that are already on this roster and how they would fit with his scheme, and kind of already giving him the nod to, hey, when you come in, the input that you have on the players that are going to be a part of this defense fucking matters.
Right.
That's super important. And to give that guy that nod before he accepts that, before he even accepts the offer is huge. I think when he sat down and said, 2 years or a couple of years ago when he was here and his daughter took his first steps in US Bank Stadium, folks, let's not undersell this. We do have one of the most passionate fan bases in the NFL, and we do have the ability to make a lot of coaches and, mid to high tier level players, Linval Joseph, Eric Kendricks, guys, they stay here. If his daughter's first steps were taken here, I'm not 100% sure that this is a one and done thing for Brian Flores.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's a one and done thing. I think he does think that this is a really good fit.
To go
everything that he
contend.
has said in his interviews and everything really comes off as genuine.
Oh yeah.
I think he's had a rocky past few years with the whole Dolphins thing and then missing the Giants boat. Minnesota as a whole, as a state, generally for its population, brings stability.
Oh yeah.
Versus other states.
Sure.
So I don't think that there's a mistake that he went to the Midwest where you can kind of put roots down. He has a young family. He has a good position and a good football culture. I think this was a smart move by him. And I think he thought about things like that for his life.
Yeah, and I think, you look at it now and you're starting to see this groundswell of belief in the situation that Kevin O'Connell has put the Vikings in, regardless of salary cap things, all of the things that we are worrying about on the outside. Now, let's take this inventory on this. Wes Phillips, highly touted offensive coordinator who just ran one of the most talented offenses, turned down a job offer in San Diego or in LA with the Chargers because he said what? Because there's unfinished business here and there's things we need to and there's things that we can pursue. And then Brian Flores, who wasn't even a part of this organization last year, turned down 2 head coaching opportunities to return to Minnesota under very, very similar pretexts, which is this team is not that far off. Now, regardless of what the general public may think, the guys that are sitting in that office are a whole hell of a lot smarter than we are. So if that is what we are hearing from guys whose careers are built around the success of the teams that they coach, maybe we should be putting a little bit more stock into what is occurring in the Minnesota Vikings front office with the players moving forward instead of this kind of grim outlook that we've kind of had over the last couple of weeks with a lot of questions about salary cap and JJ's contract and Kirk Cousins and the veterans that do or don't stay and things like that. You see what I'm saying?
To be honest, I have a grim outlook for the future of the veterans on this team, but I don't have a grim outlook for the team itself.
Yes.
I will not be changing the amount of stock that I have in this football team moving forward because I feel like I have an appropriate amount of stock in this football team moving forward.
And Mike says that is very little.
No, I actually have quite a bit because I truly believe that this is the staff that can turn from the Kirk Cousins, Harrison Smith, Eric Kendricks era.
Yes.
And start moving towards the JJs, the Cam Bynums, those types of KJ Osbornes, those types of players that are going to emerge and kind of become this new wave.
Yeah.
If Brian Flores has autonomy over his defense and the ability to bring in his own guys, KOC has autonomy over his offense and the ability to bring in his own guys, and both are working with Kwesi through the draft and free agency.
Yeah.
I trust that this is going to be a well-oiled machine 2-3 years down the road.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's going to be interesting to see what does evolve. I think it's kind of like hey, this is going to be a fun ride. I think it might end with some really deep playoff runs.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not this year, but let's watch and see.
Yeah, I think there's a window. There is a window for the Vikings still of about 4 years where they can contend.
What to me really determines your window is what you do at the quarterback position,
Mm-hmm.
maybe this year or next year. The thing is, if you draft a quarterback next year, your window could be 5 years from now.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's the thing is like how they approach what this competitive rebuild looks like.
Hey, we talked about it, right?
Determines the size of
Last
their
year
window.
was what? Competitive. This year is,
Rebuild.
and if they can be competitive in the process, great. But
I don't see why you can't be, to be honest.
Yeah,
And
no,
I mean,
absolutely.
I understand that we're gonna have a tougher schedule as a division winner, but
Kansas City is mid. Let's not get it twisted. Kansas City is mid rebuild. They are reinvesting stock into the defensive line. They are retooling
young on the O line.
young on the O line. They're retooling their wide receiving core right now, and they won a Super Bowl. But they did it by making the tough choice. They cut the Tyreek Hill.
So do you trade Justin Jefferson? Because to be honest, I don't hate the move. If you got 5 picks back like they did for Hill,
Here's the unfortunate truth. The only reason I don't is because because of what the Vikings have showed me over the last 5 years, which is they don't draft well.
this is a new regime.
I get it, but his first class, not passing it necessarily right now with flying colors. A lot is yet to be obviously observed on guys like Andrew Booth and Lewis Cine, but as of right now, the best picks that came out of last year's draft were Ed Ingram, who started but was not all that great, and
Caleb Evans.
Brian Asamoah, who might be the biggest
Caleb Evans played well.
Yeah, 3 concussions later, how much is left of that guy, right? Like, so yes, but the thing is I think JJ in it, because we saw it in LA. JJ and another weapon, a serviceable running back, and a more of a improvisational quarterback, a guy who can make the off script, who can extend the play a little bit, can win you a Super Bowl. Can you win a Super Bowl with Kirk and JJ becomes the question, and the answer is no. So you have a choice to make. We either replace Kirk and we go the Rams route pretty much, right? Or you move off JJ and surround Kirk with an absurd amount of young talent, a la Kurt Warner.
I don't think it's an either or.
You can't have both.
I think you can. And I think that's what we're going to see. I think there's a possibility that that's what we see. Either that or they move from Kirk.
They have to move from Kirk.
Those are the two most likely scenarios. I mean, here's the thing. You trade JJ away, you get a Hall of 5 draft picks. You use one of those picks for a quarterback of the future.
Sure.
And then you surround them with the other 4. Like that, you can do both. It's been done. So
sure.
I don't know. It's like I said, the most interesting thing about the Vikings is what is the team going to look like in 2025?
Yeah.
Right? I think it's going to look vastly different. So
yeah, I would agree.
Keep watching. Wild Watch. Thoughts on the Minnesota Wild as of late?
Just floating out there in the middle of the ocean, just kind of up and down, back and forth. That's who they fucking are right now.
They are treading water. They're 3-6-1 in their last 10, coming off a 2-game losing streak. Lost to the Panthers 2-1. It's always tough. Lost to the Avalanche 3-2. Yeah, man. It's my question for you. Let's look at the statistics because I have a specific question for you.
Sure,
okay?
sure.
Sorry.
If you start digging on Marc-Andre Fleury, I'm going to unplug that laptop.
I'm not going to dig, but I am going to be objectively critiquing him.
Okay.
Is that fair?
Sure. Okay. I have a thought on this regardless.
So we have 2 goalies here.
Sure.
One has played 21 games. One has played 33 games.
Gotcha.
One is allowed 2.18 goals against. One is allowed 2.98. The one with 2.18 has a 93% save percentage. The one with 2.98 has a 90.1 save percentage. Which goalie is your number 1 moving forward?
The guy with the 93% save percentage.
Thank you. That's all I want.
Yeah.
If Philippe Gustafsson becomes the number 1 and Marc-Andre spot starts him, and maybe when it's 2-2 in the playoffs, Andre Fleury comes in and gets that game 5 win, that's a huge one. That's the way I think that they need to start approaching this, because Fleury is pretty dang close to dried up and done.
You know what I want
And
more
that was
than
the fear
you know what I want more than anything?
that somebody on the
is-
show had.
I know. And it was a valid concern, right? Maybe we are seeing the cliff. Maybe he isn't going to quite make it to the end. You know what the greatest part about it is? You have the next Marc-Andre Fleury, who just won AHL Goalie of the Month for the second month in a row in Iowa, in Jesper Wallstedt. I think it's just time. I really think it is. Would I be upset if they called him up and carried 3 goalies up until the playoffs? I wouldn't be, because that kid needs to learn from what Marc-Andre Fleury has left before there's nothing left for him to learn from. And who knows, if the kid is playing lights out by the end of the season, do you really need Marc-Andre Fleury, or can you just bench him and have him play the mentorship role? Or if one of these guys goes down or whatever, and you've got 2 solid, young, athletic goalies you don't have to pay.
Yeah, I would argue, honestly, to keep him down for this year. Because if he becomes, let's say he racks up 1 or 2 more AHL goalie of the months, he finishes as the AHL's best goalie of the year, and you bring him up in training camp next year. All that's going to do is boost his confidence.
Sure.
Give Philippe Gustafsson the number 1 goalie spot. Let Fleury be a spot start veteran who was once the best in the game. Gustafsson is second in the league right now with goals against average, Nick.
Yeah.
What does that guy have to do to get the nod as your number 1?
You know, and this is 2 years in a row where you've seen Dean Evason kind of in the face.
He's also
of,
second in save percentage.
Well, I mean, he's kind of flying in the face of, hey, the other guy's the better goalie just because Marc-Andre Fleury's in the room, which that is concerning for a second year in a row if that's what you're hitting at.
Well, let's think about it. Since we've acquired Fleury, when we acquired Fleury, it was him and Talbot.
Yep.
Statistically, who was the better goalie?
Talbot.
This year, we've had Fleury and Gustafsson. Who's statistically the better goalie?
Gustafsson.
Huh. It's like we shouldn't have gotten Marc-Andre Fleury.
You know what, Mike? I'm going to give it to you.
Hey,
I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to give it to you. It took a year and 8 months, but I'm going to give it to you.
I clawed. I fought tooth and nail for that one point, man, but I'm going to take it to the bank. All right. That's where the Wild are. They're treading water, and we finally come to the realization that we may have made a mistake.
No, we did.
By bringing in Marc-Andre Fleury. All right.
We made a mistake.
Minnesota Timberwolves.
Yeah. You know, we've got a game sample size of 2 with Mike Conley. And let's just start there. Mike, your initial thoughts on the Mike Conley experience after D'Angelo Russell takes his show to L.A.
I mean, just the professionalism that he brings. Sure. I really appreciate listening to him in interviews post-game. It's a breath of fresh air after D'Lo.
Yeah.
And understandably, this is going to take a couple weeks.
Sure.
You know, teams run different sets. They have different spacing. He's got to learn who the weapons are because he is a true distributor,
yes,
right? So
is.
he's got to understand the weapons and the movement around him before he can distribute at his highest level.
Yes.
We beat the Mavs. We played really good defense down the stretch, and we beat the Mavs, which was really cool to see. Because they're supposedly one of these loaded teams in the West with Kyrie and Luka, and they're trying to figure it out at the same time we are.
So Mike, let me ask you something. Who in that Mavs game were the 2 guys that were playing lights out defense? You remember who they were?
Ant.
Uh-huh.
There was 3 of them at the very end, right? It was Ant. It was
Jaden McDaniels.
Jaden McDaniels, and was it Conley?
It was Conley. But here's what I'm going to say. I think everybody misjudged this trade as trading D'Lo makes room for Ant to be the guy to steer into that skid. I don't think that's what happened. I think this was Ant's team. I think removing D'Lo out of the equation unlocks J-Mac. And
He had 19 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 assists against the Mavs.
And I think the way that they're going to play ball now, the role that he can now take over in the offense is going to lead the Wolves to very, very big things in the second half, post All-Star break. Him being engaged on the offensive end is what created his energy on the defensive end the other night. And if you were to look at that game and that game alone and go, hey, name another team that has 2 guys under the age of 24 that are top 10 two-way players, you can't name one outside of the Minnesota Timberwolves. And that's what they showed us the other night. Kyrie Irving was on fire. 26 points in the fourth quarter. Are you kidding me? Concerning that Luka only takes one shot, but when Kyrie's shooting the ball like that, obviously that's who you go after. And when it mattered, Jaden McDaniel showed up, Ant showed up, Conley showed up, and I'm like, that's a different feel.
So now I watched that clip and I definitely thought, wow, that's actually really good defense. I'm a glutton for punishment, so I clicked on the comments of the clip on Facebook, I think it was, and there were quite a few Mavericks fans that were basically making the argument that if this game were to be played and that situation were to be replayed a month from now, that they would have won the game because the only reason that the Wolves, the Wolves were able to play such good defense was because there was indecisiveness between who should take the shot between Luka and Kyrie.
Sure, but guess what? That's not our problem.
I disagree. I think it was led to good defense. They were unable to get a clean look because we were right there every time.
Ant's athleticism genuinely bothered Luka.
Oh yeah.
Like the first time, and we watched Luka in that series against Paul George. We watched him against Paul George and Kawhi. We've watched him against some very athletic defenders. Anthony Edwards did something different to Luka in the fourth quarter. Like he was a second ahead of him. He's right. And the other thing is, Ant didn't come in. We know this now. Ant did not come in shape.
Right.
Now that he's in shape, he's gonna be a motherfucker to deal with for the rest of the season.
Well, don't look now, but the Wolves are actually the 6th seed in the West, and we are 2.5 games out of the 3 seed.
And it's a coming.
And we got the Wizards tonight, which should be a win.
Mike, is this Timberwolves optimism that we're sensing?
Dude, I look at the next 4 games, we should win them all.
I agree with you.
We should win them all. So
Yeah.
Come on, play good basketball. You guys, you could be 35-29. Which would put you probably at the 3 seed, maybe 4 seed, but still.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these teams are beatable. The Wizards, Bradley Beal very obviously doesn't want to be there anymore. The Hornets are injured, and LaMelo. I mean, Anthony Edwards nullifies LaMelo. Steph Curry.
Warriors, we somehow have the formula on how to beat the Warriors, which is like, okay, well, I guess we know how to beat the best team in basketball for the last 10 years. But.
Exactly, and depending on if the Clippers are coming off of a back-to-back, it might be a load management night for Kawhi. So, like, you have a chance to do it right. And then the biggest question is going to be, what does it look like when Cat comes back?
What I think Cat is you have Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert running the pick and roll.
Yeah.
You have the stud with Ant that you can kick out to if it's not there. You need that 3-point shooter.
I would agree with you.
Cat's going to be launching 7-8 threes a game. Off of that pick and roll sub, he's going to be an outside offensive player and leave the paint for Gobert, Conley, and Ant. That's if it works.
Yeah,
that's what it needs to look like, in my opinion.
It's funny because the one thing that Chris Finch has showed us with the Conley trade is, and leading up to it was, I don't need to have the big guy I don't need to have Gobert on the floor at all times. Yeah, we can get up big and close small.
Well, and having another big like Cat won't hurt, man.
Correct.
He's just got to be smart with how he uses them. Don't use him as a big. He doesn't want to be a big. Don't use him as a big. That's fine.
I agree.
Use him as a stretch 4.
My only concern is his attitude, and if things. It's very different in that locker room right now. It is Anthony Edwards' team. Carmelo Anthony is not walking into the same basketball team that he walked out on with this injury.
Carmelo? Carmelo? Is
Carl
it
Anthony,
Mello?
Carl Anthony Towns. He's not walking back into the same locker room. So my question is culture fit at that point, because we've seen how his temper tantrums will cost the Wolves ball games.
The guy he had the best culture vibe with
was D'Lo.
Is gone. So I think he gets that the writing is fucking on the wall, max contract or not.
Yeah.
Let us know what you guys think about the Minnesota Timberwolves moving forward. Do they go 4-0 in the next few games here? Do we see you next week with the Wolves at 35 wins? That'd be awesome. All right. Let's wrap up Minnesota Sports Roundup with Twins teaser. What do you got for the Twins here today?
Not a whole lot other than some Joey Gallo news. So this was something that was reported on Twins Daily and on MLB.com, which was that Joey Gallo looks to improve with the Twins. And by improve, Mr. Popkins, the hitting coach for the Minnesota Twins, believes that he can get Joey Gallo back to 2017 to 2021 Joey Gallo, averaging about 38 home runs, and Gallo agrees that they think he should do it. Do you take any stock in this? Do you think that he returns to form for the Twins?
I will always be one of the biggest advocates that athletics in general and baseball specifically is confidence based.
Sure.
If you go onto a baseball diamond and you are confident in your abilities, you will beat somebody who is better than you who is not confident.
Correct.
And this quote, sometimes we hitters get so focused on what we can't do that you don't really allow yourself to play to your strengths. It's kind of getting back to who he was or something.
Who he was, and he was a very dangerous hitter. Yep.
That's confidence, man. That sounds to me like they are training his confidence and saying, this is what you did great.
Yep.
Look at all of these things. This is how you did it. This is your form. They're pumping him up.
So,
man.
yeah,
this is a confidence boost. This is great.
So the context of this article actually says, and you can read it in the first line here. Yeah, success leaves behind clues. What they're doing is they're apparently in the last 2 stops that he's had, both in New York and in L.A., with one porch being so short, he has actually developed a hole in his swing that he didn't used to have on the inside.
Because he undercuts the ball more.
Yep. And so what they're trying to get him to do is tighten back up and level out. They're specifically, they said shorter and quicker with his swing instead of the kind of like the Prince Fielder approach that we saw for all those years. If it's doable, Gallo's power is among league best. I mean, 3 years ago, he does hit smack dab between Aaron Judge and Gwen Carlos Stanton at 42 home runs or something crazy like that. Like, it's doable. I do worry that once again we're getting duped by Twins media and the Pohlad pocket protectors who are trying to inflate him. But
if he hits 29, I'm happy.
Yeah.
To be honest.
29, 90 RBIs, and
we just need him to be able to step into the box and be like, he could hit a home run here.
Sure. Yeah. And you
know what I mean? And if he hits 25 to 30, that's that.
Yeah.
That's that. That draws some walks in key situations.
Yes.
It plays a part if he can hit 30.
Okay.
We don't need him to hit the 38. That would be amazing. Trust me. I would love it. We just don't need that. We need a pop bat that can hit a home run at any time.
All right, Mike, let's do this. What number does Joey Gallo have to get to for us to buy a Joey Gallo jersey for the studio?
33.
33?
He hits 33 home runs or more, we'll buy a Gallo jersey.
There we go. We'll do it. And then Brad Hand, coming off some injuries. That's the only other thing that I have on the Twins. Sounds like there is some interest there to kind of bring him in and I guess kind of rehabilitate him a little bit. Any interest in this?
To be honest, I hadn't heard too much. I've heard a little bit. Is Brad Hand still playing baseball? This one article.
He is, and the Twins would like to have him pitch.
Yeah, I guess I'm not. He's from Minneapolis, Kansas.
Okay.
Last year with the Phillies, started 0 games. He's I guess he was a starter, but he's not anymore, is he?
Mm-hmm.
55 games, 2.8 ERA, 1.3 WHIP. That's not bad at all.
Yeah, I think if it's the last
What
stop,
was the injury?
I believe it was the elbow.
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, evaluate through camp. I'd be interested.
Spring invite, maybe?
He's had 1 bad year. Other than that, 2.05 ERA, 0.77 WHIP. 2.7 ERA, 1.28 WHIP. 2.8 ERA, 1.3. That'd be our best reliever.
Outside of Yohan Duran, but yeah.
Like, seriously, though. So, yeah, I'm interested.
Let's do it. Bring him in. That's all I got on the Twins. Anything else? Pitchers and catchers reported. So we'll
win
start
ball games this year.
You know what, Mike? Next week, should we do our patented lap around baseball before spring training?
Sure.
Let's do it.
It's patented.
It's patented.
With that, we're going to do our main segment of the day, off-season Kickstarter is what we're going to call it.
Yes, sir. We've got tunage.
We're going to talk of quite a few storylines to watch. We each have 4, it looks like.
Yeah, we want to go every other?
Sure. I'll start.
Have at it.
The main one to me, as frustrating and as annoying as it is, as a Vikings fan, it affects our season and our team, and that's whether or not number 12 comes back to the Green Bay Packers.
Whether or not number 12 comes back at all, whether or not number 12 comes back to somebody else. That is the question. He is 2 days into a 4-day darkness retreat where I'm sure he is doing all the ayahuasca in the world. I think that's pretty much what that was.
I hope he's just
key.
envisioning a Jets logo.
Yeah, just go ahead and continue to follow the Farva brick road.
Hey, I'm not gonna lie. I'd take him a year from now.
Yeah.
That's what it would be, right? 1 year?
Yeah.
I'd take him a year from now.
For 2 years?
For 2 years? Just saying.
Look at Mike. Already turning the corner on Aaron.
Oh, I wouldn't root for him. I'd root for the purple. And he'd help the purple. I'm not gonna lie to you. What's your first storyline to watch?
First one for me is going to be Sean Payton's impact. I don't think we can underestimate not only the situation that he's placed himself in, but the impact he's going to have on the situation now that he's there. This is his last big coaching stop.
He's also going to a team now in the division of the defending Super Bowl champion.
Correct. And with potentially Aaron Rodgers on the way, right? Like, I think the Raiders and Aaron Rodgers, a reuniting of him and Devontae Adams is a potential.
The Raiders?
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers to the Raiders.
Sean Payton.
Yeah, I know. I was just talking about the impact on the situation, right? Like,
oh, okay. Okay. So I apologize. Let's make this very clear for the fans at home because this is where I went. I thought you were talking about Sean Payton's impact on the Denver Broncos. You're talking about the Sean Payton impact as far as where pieces are going to fall throughout the offseason.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Two very different things.
Yep, absolutely. You look at the magnitude of him being there. He does have name value to a lot of free agents. Relationships that he's made throughout the league over a course of years for trade value, his ability to, and he's always drafted well when it comes to surrounding or at least the weapons positions, like late round wide receivers, late round running backs, finding offensive linemen that work early.
I would agree. He's actually, if you look at his draft record, quite successful.
So now Denver doesn't have a lot of draft capital right now, but if that's how Sean Payton chooses to build his teams, does that mean his team looks maybe different coming into the offseason? Trading some more pieces to generate, offset Russell Wilson's cap hit like he did with Drew Brees for all those years. It's going to be a really interesting offseason just to kind of see what should have happened with the Broncos a year ago.
Sure.
Right?
My next storyline to watch is going to be the offensive coordinator for the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. It is Eric Bieniemy. He has an interview here with the Washington Commanders for their OC job. I personally disagree with this. I think it's a lateral move, if not a demotion. You're going to a team that has a worse front office, a worse quarterback, a worse head coach. So you're basically making it harder for yourself. Your argument, I respect, is basically he's going to show that he can call plays.
Yeah,
but at the same time, to me, the situation that I see is Andy Reid's going to retire in a year or two, and he's going to be the heir apparent.
I don't know if Andy Reid's going to retire in a year or two. I think, as long as Patrick is around, there's no reason to. You know what I mean? Like, you just ride.
Well, there's
that
also
train.
no reason for Eric Bieniemy to leave. How many rings does he want?
But, I believe his goal has always been to become a head coach of the NFL, right? So you have to, kind of like with Brian Flores, you go with your gut feeling and where you need to go, right?
You think that's Washington?
I don't think it's Washington, but I think he understands that they have a young quarterback that he can mold. They drafted Howell last year.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Heineke is very much there. Maybe he tries to revitalize another quarterback, but you've got McLaurin, you've got a half decent offensive line, you got Brian Robinson, you're in the NFC East, which any given year you can win that division based on injuries or salary caps or whatever happens to the Dallas Cowboys or whatever, right? He needs to go show that he can call plays, because that's the one knock unfairly that he's getting in all of his interviews. I said this to you before the show. There are 3 or 4 other guys that have been offensive coordinators under Andy Reid that have gotten head coaching jobs without ever having called plays. So the question for me becomes, what's so different about Eric Bieniemy to where he's interviewed for 16 head coaching jobs and not received a single one of them? Let's take a second and look at that for what it is. But if that's what he needs to do, then maybe he is saying, yeah, I just need to leave to go get that on my resume.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting to watch if he leaves the Chiefs. Does that have an impact? I know that him and Mahomes didn't really get along anyway. And like you said, he wasn't calling plays. So interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting to watch. What's your second storyline?
That the Ravens are taking trade offers. Now, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I'm pretty sure before the season started last year, I said that before this upcoming season started, Lamar Jackson would not be the quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens. They are still reportedly $100 million apart in guaranteed money on his contract, and they're planning to franchise tag him is the word, but you know what I didn't hear in there was there's two different franchise tags, right? There's the unconditional one or something like that. So the way that it goes,
You're my salary cap guy. I thought there was one.
there's two different types of franchise tags. One is like they franchise tag him and it's pretty much put aside. The other
Do you
one,
want me to look it up?
yeah, the other one is the way that the rules work, I believe, is they can put a franchise tag on him and then he can go search for offers, a la Davante Adams last year or Tyreek Hill.
Okay, the most common type of franchise tag is the non-exclusive one, which means that NFL players can still negotiate with other teams following the application of the tag. Meanwhile, the exclusive franchise tag prevents players from negotiating with other teams.
So he's going to get when they say franchise tag, they did not say exclusive. I think it's going to be a non-exclusive franchise tag, and a la Davante Adams last year, a la Tyreek Hill behind the scenes, a la Deshaun Watson in his situation. Lamar's going to be able to go wherever he wants and go, all right, the tag is the deal is $250 million guaranteed over at least 5 years. That's the contract that he wants. And whatever team is going to give it to him, the Ravens are going to say, because they're going to have to conditionally negotiate that if we let you do this, this is the framework for what we want in return. It's just going to be one of those things where, like, you turn on the television and Lamar Jackson's been traded. He's not staying in Baltimore. I don't care. It came out the other day, by the way, that offensive coordinators that were interviewing for that job were not guaranteed that Lamar was going to be back.
Jason La Canfora
Yep.
says more than one NFL general manager came away from the Senior Bowl fairly convinced that Justin Fields will be dealt.
Yeah.
Now, typically quarterbacks are schematically compatible. Teams that run offenses like to get quarterbacks that are schematically compatible for their team.
Right.
Those two are similar styles.
Yeah.
Do we see a move between the Bears and Ravens?
Potentially, but I don't
don't want to have to play Lamar twice a year.
I was going to say, but here's the caveat with that. With what they have in both a high draft pick and a quarterback, I think that deal can be done, and it doesn't have to involve Lamar Jackson.
Fair enough. All right. Speaking of quarterbacks, my next storyline to watch is what happens in the 49ers quarterback room. Now, this is interesting. George Kittle did come out and say on the 49ers QB situation that it is Brock's job to lose, which I probably agree with.
Yes.
But I think he might lose it. Because here's the thing, at the end of the day in camp, what they are judging is who looks the most polished,
Correct.
who's taking over the team the most, who's doing these things. The experience of veterans, Jimmy Garoppolo, and yes, Trey Lance hasn't played a game, but he's been in the NFL and he knows how to run a team like that as a quarterback. It's going to be a tough sell for Brock Purdy to make it through camp as that team's number one quarterback, unless they invest in Brock Purdy and they get those two out of house.
I think that there is, with all of the quarterback movement that is going on this offseason, and Aaron Rodgers is very obviously the biggest domino to fall. If he retires, you're putting 3-team situations in absolute free fall, because then all of a sudden the best quarterback on the market is Derek Carr, right? Trey Lance could become
Saints,
a very, very, very interesting trade piece for the 49ers. You got to the NFC Championship and damn near beat the Eagles without him having an arm.
Yeah.
If you move Trey Lance and go get another pick, another piece, another starter, that's a Super Bowl roster with Brock Purdy on it.
It is. It's going to be very interesting to watch what happens in that quarterback room. I think a lot of it that's going to be developing is going to be in that August time period when they report to camp and they're competing for that job. I think it's going to be really fun to watch.
It's going to be interesting because Brock Purdy is 6 months away from being able to throw.
He'll be fine. That's August. All right. Your next storyline, sir.
What's going on with the Rams?
Well,
I think they've
Sean McVay said he's sticking around.
He's sticking around. But the questions now become, when we've already seen it floated, are they going to have to start to move off some of these high-end, fuck-them-pick style players? Can you move Aaron Donald?
Well, here's
What's
the
for
thing.
the right price? Can
When
you move
trade
Jalen
picks
Ramsey?
for years for talent?
You got to start bringing them back at some point.
Those players get old.
And they're expensive.
You got to basically churn it over now. And if McVay is in it for the long haul, that's
Yeah.
how you do it. Is you trade Donald, you trade Ramsey, you trade Stafford, you
might even,
rehaul
like-
the whole fucking
I mean,
thing.
you could almost, you could move on from Cooper Kupp.
Yeah. You
You
like,
know?
if you want a Super Bowl again in the next 5 years, if you're McVay,
You got to reset it,
you got to do what the Eagles did and reset the whole fucking thing.
which is super intriguing because, I mean, I've already seen some reports about the defense, the number 5 from the Rams being a sleeper home here in Minnesota with his connection to Kevin O'Connell and some of the other things that we have going on as far as needing a defensive back.
I'm not gonna lie to you. That would
Yeah.
be sick.
Or,
That would be a jersey I would probably get.
Or Aaron Donald. Would you trade Danielle Hunter and Zadarius Smith and Harrison Phillips and Dalvin Tomlinson for Aaron Donald?
No. That's too much. But
You know what I'm saying.
Yeah. It's
There's
close.
plenty of
It's
options
close. My next storyline is what happens to Geno Smith? Comes off comeback player of the year.
Yeah.
Puts up Seahawk franchise records in passing touchdowns, beating Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Rumors are Seahawks are looking for a new quarterback next year. Geno Smith might be one of the most intriguing quarterback free agents out there.
So if I'm Pete Carroll, I'm looking at one of two avenues of approach. And the unfortunate truth is neither one of them likely have Geno Smith as my long-term solution. The first one is going to be, is Geno, and only Pete Carroll knows this, capable of mentoring a project quarterback? It's been proven that if you get a project quarterback and you have the right guy, more oftentimes than not, it will work.
Yep. You need that mentor.
You absolutely need it. Aaron Rodgers had Brett Favre. Jimmy Garoppolo even had
I
Tom
don't know if
Brady.
that's the best example, but
Well, okay. Patrick Mahomes.
Favre was a dick to him.
Patrick Mahomes had Alex Smith.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There are tons of examples, and that's why I was saying, like, I don't know if the Rodgers Favre one. Favre was like an asshole to him.
That's the
whole
first one
time,
I could
but,
grab.
yeah,
You know what I mean? I think if he has the capability to do that, then you grab a guy, Bo Nix, Anthony Richards. You grab a true
Richardson,
project. Yeah, Anthony Richardson. A true project guy that you can begin to build an offense around, not this year, but the following year. If he is not capable of doing so, I'm trading Geno Smith and draft capital to get up inside the top 3 and get yourself a CJ Stroud or
So it's top 3, that would be like Texans. Do the Texans want Geno?
is he better than
Davis Mills?
Yeah, probably.
Something to watch.
Something to watch.
What's your last one?
I'm so intrigued by the future of Mike McCarthy. Dan Quinn.
I don't think there is a future of Mike McCarthy, dog.
Yeah, I know. So it's just weird to me. They make Kellen Moore the scapegoat. Kellen Moore only led that off at the Dallas offense to be what, the second and fifth most effective or most yard gaining offenses over a 3-year span, right? And they let him walk out the door to the Chargers. Mike McCarthy is going to retake control of the offense. Last time he called plays, Aaron Rodgers threw more balls out of bounds than he completed. That's the guy you're going to have calling plays next year. And Dan Quinn and that defense, where everybody is about to get paid. Trayvon Diggs is up this year. Micah Parsons is up next year. You've still got other guys you're going to have to pay. Javon Kearse been a starter for them for 3 years now. He's going to want some money at some point. If all your money's going to the defensive side of the ball, if all your production and all your stars are on the defensive side of the ball, who should your head coach probably be? Your defensive-minded head coach in Dan Quinn, who has kept you afloat over the last 3 years. I don't know why they just don't make that move now.
Well, I think they're going to invest in Dak Prescott, and that's the McCarthy method. Is he's going to run an offense around his quarterback, and Prescott's going to show that he's not a franchise quarterback because he throws too many picks.
I don't know if Dak, with all of the quarterback things that are going on this offseason, I'm not sure he's safe.
I think he's safe this offseason, but I think his handcuffing to Mike McCarthy brings them both down.
Jesus.
That is our storylines to watch throughout the offseason. Let us know if we missed any and what you're watching.
Yeah, what are
For
you
this offseason.
watching?
With that, we're going to transition to UFC fight news. I'm going to try my best with Gabe not here today to kind of go back and forth with Nick, but it is going to be a Nick-led segment. First and foremost, John Kavanagh's Mendez comparison.
No, we're going to go with the Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway fight first. My apologies.
That's
my
at
guy.
the bottom.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
UFC 284 over the weekend, obviously. Alexander Volkanovski, pound for pound title. Islam Makhachev in Australia. First of all, great event. The fights were great, except for the main event. I'm sorry. I know people look at Islam and they go, look, he muscled around Alexander Volkanovski and this, that, and the other thing. But what the fight really was Islam laying on him, not landing significant strikes, not any submission attempts, nothing. I could argue that outside of how crisp Islam looked in the brief moments where they were on the feet, that Alexander Volkanovski won that fight.
I've heard that quite a bit, that people judged it very similarly, but the other way.
Yeah. And the issue is, at most, this, because of what was on the line, and I know this is going to sound contradictory to what we said with football, but in fighting, the pound-for-pound title matters. The belts matter. The prime that the fighters are in all matters, right? You can't, if it is that close, you shouldn't be calling it one way or the other. You call it a majority draw, and you run it back in 3 months.
Can they still run it back?
You can, but the UFC had to sacrifice some credibility to do it. The pound-for-pound rankings, where Islam was 2 and Alex was 1 before the fight, came out for after the fight this Tuesday. And guess what? The order didn't change. Even though Islam now has a win over Alexander Volkanovski, he still sits at number 2.
Which I agree with.
I do too, but if you drop Alex to number 2, you can't run that rematch back, because then the UFC is acknowledging that he has surpassed him in pound for pound.
Sure.
So, but that list, that pound for pound list for them has been crucial forever.
Well,
it's been one of their driving factors.
Leaving him at 1 leaves the door open for a rematch then, right?
Right, but I'm just saying, like, the UFC wouldn't have had to sacrifice the credibility of their pound for pound rankings if you just call it a draw, which the referees the scoring should have done. Nobody landed anything significant, and the only person to land like a dropping blow was Alexander Volkanovski on Islam in the second round. Yeah. So you have to run it back, in my opinion, and I don't think Islam's gonna make it through the next one. Alexander Volkanovski to me looked he looked heavier. He didn't look like he had time to fill out. We kind of talked about this with the Conor thing. When he used to go up to 170, coming up from 155, he just his power didn't travel, because that's not what his body's naturally at. There's no way your body has adjusted to that.
Sure.
If you give Volkanovski another 6 months to fill out that frame and become a true 155 pounder, I don't know if Islam makes it out of the cage next time.
Fair enough. All right, now John Kavanagh's Mendez comp.
Yeah, so obviously the hype train has already started as Conor McGregor is kind of re-entering the UFC atmosphere, getting ready for the Ultimate Fighter. Coach Kavanaugh has said on multiple occasions, for those of you that don't know, that the only way he would go back to training Conor McGregor is if he was serious about the fight game, and has done a little bit of a media tour here ahead of obviously being in camp with him for the television show, and is saying things like this could be Conor's Chad Mendes comparison. This is a comparison that he's making to GSP when he took about 3 years off and then moved up officially to 170 and put on an absolute light show. So that is high praise from one of the UFC's most respected coaches. Mike, let's start there. Other comments, by the way, have been, he looks re-obsessed. He looks passionate. I've never seen him more pumped up. Sean O'Malley has come out and said that on the feet, Conor still looks sharp. Are you starting to buy any of the media around Conor's return?
No, not yet.
Such a hard sell, my guy.
There was media around his return last time, and then he lost. There was media around his return the time before that, and he lost. There was media around his return the time before that,
and he won. He beat Donald Cerrone.
Oh, yeah, he beat Cowboy. What about the time before that? He lost.
Yep.
Okay. So he's 1-3 in his last fights. I don't know. It's cool. It's going to be a big draw, obviously, to see Conor back. Good for him.
Should we go? Might be the last time we get to see one of the legends of the UFC fight.
I'm okay. You can go. You and Gabe should go.
You should go.
You and Gabe should go.
You should go.
Izzy backs Francis while hinting at retirement.
Yeah, this one was interesting. He's obviously been doing some media ahead of the Alex Pereira fight. MMA Junkie reports Israel Adesanya wants to leave on top. Doesn't think he'll be fighting in 5 years.
How old is he?
He's 36, I believe.
Yeah, he better not be fighting in
Something
5
like
years.
that. For me, it's interesting. He obviously comes to the UFC a little bit later than most because of his kickboxing career already. This doesn't necessarily surprise me. I was almost actually worried about this when I saw Francis leave the UFC. The three African princes have pretty much been in line their entire meteoric rise to the top. Francis, Kamaru, and Izzy. And with one domino missing out of the three, I did worry about the other two. Kamaru Usman has already talked about how bad his knees are. How many fights does he have left? Izzy's only thing he's really fighting for at this point is beating Pereira in a rematch. And outside of that, he's done all that he needs to do, if I'm being totally honest with you.
Yeah, see, this is the worry that I have with the UFC and organizations that are built up like this is you put so much media into a few guys.
Yeah.
Connor, the three African princes. What happens after that?
Yeah.
It's tough to fill that void if you don't have LeBron James stepping in after Michael. And right now, I don't see one personally. Do you? Sean O'Malley, maybe?
Sean O'Malley is definitely going to get his fair share of media run. I definitely think that with John Jones being back for 8 fights,
but again,
that's
bringing him back because they don't have anybody else younger that's filling that. Do you see my point?
True, but they've pushed it out.
That's the WWE bringing back Brock Lesnar because they don't have a fighter.
I totally agree with you, but they've pushed that one out far enough. 8 fights for John Jones is going to cover 3 years. You have to remember who else is in a guy that's in the heavyweight division who's going to kind of have the Khabib treatment is Kamaru Usman's older brother who just won the other season of The Ultimate Fighter. There is heavyweights in that division that are coming. It has been stagnated by Francis's whole fucking ordeal lately, right? Then you look at 170. There are some exciting guys coming up at 170. 155.
Name like one or two. You're just saying that there's guys coming. Name one other than Sean O'Malley.
Sean O'Malley's at 135.
But he's like the only big name that's under 26 that's coming up.
Bo Nickel. No, not Bo. Bo Nix.
He's a quarterback that's going to be drafted.
Then it is Bo Nickel. Bo Nickel he's a wrestling savant, like gold medalist, world class.
Okay.
Good on the feet. He's on the way. Do
you see my point?
I see where there are some gaps, but the beauty of it is I like Yair Rodriguez also, by the way. I will say that. His win against Josh Emmett, his striking style is going to win a lot of people over. But there was always kind of a hole. And then the thing about the fight game is it just takes one underdog to beat a legit fighter to reignite that same energy, right? That's what's so beautiful about how the UFC is set up, right? If Sean O'Malley goes out and gives Aljamain Sterling 2-piece and a biscuit and he goes out in the first round, the UFC has nothing to fucking worry about. If John Jones come in and starches Ciryl Gane, the UFC has nothing to worry about. You know what I mean? Like it really is. I think Pereira's another one of them. If Pereira hangs around for a while and just mashes on guys between 185 and 205.
All I'm saying is I think that's the storyline as we watch these big names leave.
Yeah.
Is who fills that void.
I wouldn't disagree there. I wouldn't disagree.
I think that's it, right?
Wow, I felt like this was a quick show.
That was a quick show. About an hour and 20. Nice and tight.
Nice.
Twite like a twiga.
God, I knew it was fucking coming.
With that, guys, if you are a sports fan with Sports Fan Friends, make sure to like and share and follow.
And subscribe.
On Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Spotify, YouTube, and Patreon.
And
you
Twitch.
Can find us on cable in the Twin Cities at MCN6, Saturdays at 10 p.m. Also through your Roku app if you are anywhere other than the Twin Cities area on planet Earth.
To include Saigon. We made it.
Yep. With that.
Yeah, absolutely. Frankie, thanks for stepping in for Gabe this week. Absolutely incredible production value. Thank you so much.
That's a golf clap right there.
Round of applause. And make sure you guys join us next week as I think we're going to do our lap around baseball, start checking in on some spring training stuff. Obviously, we're going to get more familiar with the NBA as the All-Star break is coming up. And as always, we'll have any football news that drops ever on this show. Until next time, take care, stay safe, have fun. There we go. The volume button got her.